According to Martin Heidegger, space is not endless and universal, but bounded. Space is thus framed or otherwise delimited phenomenon that does not exist prior to the creation of the boundary. It exists because of the purpose of form. Space allows us to dwell not only because we feel somewhat protected by its limits, but also because it is these limits that allow us to experience space as presence. Boundary is a place of contentment, but as well a place of ongoing struggle. To begin is to open out from the boundary, as the opening appears as a possibility of action. Our group research was about traces of the past, where we talked about the founding of what has been there from before, and still their traces remain to discover the founding. Our aim is to reinterpret Lebanon's past to create a new collective memory for the nation. Start talking about the milieu around our site. As I started first with Quarantina, it got its name from the French term La Quarantine, since it was a quarantine station for maritime travelers. Next to Maram Khail, you'll find Jemaizi. The name Jemaizi comes from a tree carrying its name Jemez, but now the tree is rarely found since most of them are cut down, making way for more buildings. Nevertheless, in Maram Khail you'll find the Maram Khail train station. It is a remnant of the old railway station that used to serve Beirut. During our recent visit to the port, we found old remnants of the train rail tracks that are still present and never got removed. What actually caught my eye more was the tramway more than the train, since it was the clearest memory for those who remember the area. The tramway system provided Lebanon with electricity as well as organizing the time because of its schedule arriving and departure, which led to setting of tower clocks by the government officials. In 1931, the tramway covered 12 kilometers around Beirut's center. Nevertheless, as cars became more popular and widely adopted, the tram tracks were removed. It was fully decommissioned in 1968. People said that the tramway system was removed by the Lebanese regime to eliminate anything that is shared among the Lebanese people. At the beginning of the 21st century, the tramway was a means of transportation to the markets, the old souks. The old Beirut souks were named after special commodities such as سوق الإزاز, سوق الحرير, سوق الشوخ, سوق القطن, in addition to craftsmanship such as سوق اللحامين, سوق النجارين, سوق الحدادين. Beirut souks is the largest commercial area in Beirut. It was the commercial nerve center of the city until 1975 when it was destroyed by the civil war. It was rehabilitated in 1994 in a modern style by Solitaire. It was not the Lebanese war that caused the most destruction, but rather the 1994 rebuilding. The whole center of the city was literally and intentionally razed. The systematic destruction of heritage at the hands of Solitaire that came to the rescue to build a new and unrecognizable Beirut in which traces of the conflict were removed and replaced by new buildings to hide its scars and make Beirut beautiful again. This affected its inhabitants who lost their homes and businesses, affected its history and archaeological sites, and historical buildings were erased and built over, and affected the shared memory of the Lebanese people who no longer share a common identity. Thus, the new souks, through preserving their characteristics, locations, volumes, connections, and function, challenge the problem of the tabula rasa for the reconstruction of the city and its continuity. Foch Street, or Marshal Ferdinand Foch Street, is the commercial heart of Beirut and the gateway to the old Beirut port and one of Beirut's seven gates. The story of Beirut's seven gates goes back to the 1900s. It was hard to imagine the city inside limits of a wall. Though we know that it was placed to guard the capital as much as possible, Once the wall was destroyed, gates were left as they were, and Beirut became a different place. When the wall was destroyed, people had more freedom to build and expand their structures. This was where the Beirut Damascus Road came to life in the 1860s, and the port was founded in the 1880s. Where Beirut's seven gates are باب السلسلة، باب الدباغة، باب السراي، باب أبو الناصر، باب دركا، باب يعقوب and باب إدريس. In August 6, 1945, a 16 kiloton atomic bomb killed 140,000 people and reduced the city to rubble. Hiroshima has been reborn as a place of peace and prosperity. People can come to compare the horrors of the past with the city Hiroshima has become today. Hiroshima's park is a memorial park in the center of Hiroshima, Japan. It is dedicated to the memories of the bomb's victims. The bomb dome is the skeletal ruins of the former Hiroshima. It is the only building that remained at least partially standing. It was left as it was after the bombing. As part of our study of the site, the incorporation and the examination of the main elements sand, dust, ash, and concretion that are vital components of our target space is a way toward a better understanding of the founding and in mediating between nature and artifact by the transformation of raw matter into one form or another. Once built from concrete, through fire and ash, turned into dust and sand. The main element in my project is concrete. During my research, I found that from the rubble of concrete and ash, we can create new material, lighter, stronger than concrete to rebuild any structure. After visiting the site, my research was reinforced when the army told us about Resnonov, a French engineering company group that aims to recycle rubble and turning it into new material for construction, which confirms my research. So, the new material that is grinded will reshape the site as the seeds inside the silos will fall and grow, giving a new life to my site after many years later. So the site will be reborn as a place of peace and prosperity. The story behind my concept starts when we enter the port to see all the rubble, the ashes, and the broken steel. The Lebanese army was on the front line in the day of the blast. They started breaking the concrete blocks with hand hammers and machines. They are grinding them in order to rescue the life underneath the rubble. So my project aims to grind the concrete for over 100 years to keep the memory of the blast alive for all those who lived through the tragedy. So I'm grinding the silo slowly, which is creating dunes of concrete dust that is carrying inside them seeds of trees that have dominated the area in the past and remnants of them barely exist now, like James trees, giving new life to the site for the new generation. My intervention is valuing the memory of the space by grinding the silos and providing a new vision for a new future. So, my project is an operational performance that does action and generates a result. Also, my folly is destructive as well as defensive. It defends the memory by erasing it slowly and giving new life to the site, so the memory will never subside. And finally, by achieving the state of qua is by erasing the memory in order to enhance it and move forward. So it's more pushing the memory itself by erasing it. I am enhancing the memory. In my rig N, I try to relate my model to the thought of that the boundary is a place of contentment and conflict. My idea was to push and pull the ground to become a limit action. As for that, the earth was the boundary. So, the boundary is a notion of the skin. So, skinning the ground as boundary where the ground is barely pulled out. Model rig N. While setting kinetics, I try to express how rotational motion can move into transversal motion. in my real life model 1 over 1000. This is an exact replica of the destroyed silos that I redid, showing the amount of damage on a small scale, which is 1 over 1000. In the technical drawings prototypes, as you can see in my prototypes, I made multiple models and side plans where most of them have slight changes between them to develop into the final model. In these drawings, I try to represent the identity of my mechanism, where with extreme care and precision that I was able to create strong visuals of my project as I imagined them in space, where I tried to represent the main character of the mechanism, which is providing motion. In the technical drawing, this drawing is a side plan of the model, where I chose the silos as my center point and tried to develop it. From it, I made parallel axes. In my array model 1 over 1000, I tried to make my model also according to the axes, which are parallel to the silos and according to the borderline. I put my room on the highest level to allow access to the visitors to go underground to the bay, where ships, boats, and yachts can dock on both Q7 and Q8. I tried to play with the levels of the ground as much as possible for the visitors to enjoy the levels of the area. In my final model, I tried to keep the previous mechanism and develop it. I tried to interrelate the idea of the boundary with the notion of the skin, where the boundary now turned from skinning the earth to skinning the volume in space, the incoming cylinder. It becomes a boundary because the inside and the outside now are interrelated. Have a relation between them, but they are distinct. My project reacted in how I raised the current time and moved into the future, allowing ample time for the absorption of the catastrophe. I'm grinding the current silos to erase slowly the effect of the blast in order to propose a future vision. In my 1 over 50 model, the room acts as a place for prayer and meditation. It's creating space that allows visitors to connect to the place while casting shadow inside the rooms, creating a place of serenity. It's a place for gathering, healing the wound of the people. Like the 1 over 150 model, the 1 over 100 model is a continuation of the many rooms I have on the silos. This structure creates a degraded environment and follows a certain order. As you can see, my mechanism evolved from the beginning but kept the same idea of the wheel and the motion. I integrated it into my project, for it became a crucial part of the project. The mechanism is an independent machine. The mechanism is about turning rotational motion into linear motion, moving back and forth orthogonal to the silos. Another motion which allows the machine to grind all the silage with the propeller having sandpaper on it. We've reached the putting together stage of my model. In this drawing, I tried to present the voyage through time that shows the transformation on site, where it shows the transition of the people to another world, while also proposing a future vision of the site where trees and dunes start to dominate the silos. Render, I try to represent the identity of my material, where with extreme care and precision that I was able to create strong visuals of the material texture. In these pictures, the site shows the remains that stand as a memory of those who are no longer with us. They embody now the absence of those who were lost. Their remains will allow us to remember them and turn their absence into presence. A sense of disbelief would prevail as the sun rose the next day, casting light on the extent of the damage. The silos were also a refuge through the years of the war, as there was down storage on the ground floor and corridors. Imagine how solid that building was, and now it's the victim. Our entire project is based on how we can revive the area after what happened, where site now allows for things to grow. As for there is grains of on the site that began to sprout. So the grains are some kind a symbol of hope that we can continue but never forget what happened. History in my project through picking the tramway as a point of inspiration, since it goes one in one direction and doesn't change its path. The government removed it because created a really complex mechanism where the mechanism is an independent machine. The machine is about turning rotational motion into linear, moving back and forth orthogonal to the silos, as you can see, which allows the machine to grind the silos with the propeller having sandpaper on it and grinding them. There's another motion which allows